right? Let's hope for the best. Hey guys, welcome to this video. Let's start again.
We can keep going because we can edit this out.
Well, no, let's start. I'm sorry.
Girl, you
All right.
hot.
It's together. All right. Hey guys, welcome to this video where we're going to tell you 3 ways you can get rid of your student loan debt just like we did. All right. I'm Dr. Nina Loom. I'm the host, the podcaster at the IMG Roadmap.com, the blogger at drninaloom.com. I help IMGs to create their own medical success stories. And I invited my friend here.
Dr. Farzad Alikozai. I'm an internal medicine physician. I'm a colleague of Dr. Nina Loom. Also budding a video blogger inspired by this one.
Yes, I'm a hospitalist too. So, all right, guys, let's get into it. We're going to tell them what 3 ways that we got rid of student loan debt.
Now listen up here. I don't know if you guys recently heard, but there were some stories of some 70-year-old lady who just finished paying off her student loan debt. And you don't want to be that person paying those loans off up for 30 years plus, right?
Right, because I mean, think about it. You're going to have a house. You're probably going to have a mortgage on your house if you don't pay cash for it. You know, you're going to acquire other types of debt over the course of your life. You don't need to carry that burden of student loans with you.
Oh, yeah. And that money that you pay towards your student loan every month is money that can go somewhere else, right? And that's one of the first steps of building wealth is actually getting rid of your debt. So
Right.
This is really important, and it actually applies to everybody.
Right. I actually saw an article the other day that in the physician world, 50% of physicians are worth over, 50% of physicians are worth under $1 million. And then I think like 48% are worth over $1 million, I think. And then over the 5 million mark is like an even lower percentage. But it's strange because, and I have to put those numbers together, I don't remember them, but it was really amazing to think that you could be worth so much more if you don't have so much debt.
Oh, yeah.
Because when you start out with debt, what ends up happening is you end up at a negative net worth. Right? Even though you're making a good salary or a good pay or whatever, maybe you own your own practice, but then you end up acquiring so much debt that you're always in the negative.
Oh, yeah. So here are some strategies that we're going to teach you to help you get rid of that fast, okay? But before we do that, we kind of wanted to go into our stories and talk about our own stories of how we got rid of our debt. So you want to go ahead, Nina?
Yes. So the first thing I want to tell everybody, which I did, was to live like a resident right after residency. So not upgrading my lifestyle. Well, who am I kidding? I actually upgraded my lifestyle and then I downgraded it when I realized that I could be putting a lot more towards debt. So I'm an IMG, so that means I did not personally, I'm a non-US IMG. I did not attend undergraduate here. So I didn't have undergrad debt. But while I was in the Korean medical school, I did take out some loans. By the time I was ready to pay, it was like a 7% interest. It was about $110K, right around there. But one of the things that I did was to maintain my residency lifestyle after finishing residency. Well, my first year, I walked into the Mercedes-Benz lot, signed me a brand new car, walked into the best neighborhood in town, signed me a nice little condo with the pool and everything. Like I was like bawling. And then I realized a year in that I could be paying a lot more towards that debt and acquiring and keeping my money more by not paying that much interest, right? So then I decided to downgrade and move out of the bigger city, at least for Kentucky, move away from Lexington and go into a much smaller area. So by that, I was able to cut down my expenses dramatically, and all that money started going towards my debt. Before I could blink, it was gone.
There you go.
Yeah. So why don't you tell us a big tip? Because you even have, he's a U.S. grad, so definitely, you have undergraduate, and then you have med school loans, and then,
Just like piles up on top of
it's
each
double
other.
whammy. So tell us what you did.
So when I finished residency, I remember checking my student loan portal and being shocked by how much I saw, because of all of residency, I was kind of ignoring it. I knew it was growing, and just like paying the bare minimum, right? So I finished with $340,000 worth of student loan debt, and that's a lot of money.
That's a lot.
So I called the ladies at my loan servicer company, and I asked them, like, what are some of the plans that you have that maybe I can do? And she said, well, we have a 22-year plan where you'd be paying $2,000 a month. And I was like, OMG.
For 22 years.
22 years paying $2,000 a month. That's like a vacation. That's like so many things.
That's like
you can
two
buy.
houses.
Right, and that's also, you got to think that that's just the principal of the loan on top of the interest that they're charging you. By the time you're 22 years out, you're paying almost as much as interest as the entire principal. Right? So it doesn't make sense financially. So my thought was, how can I get rid of this debt? So some strategies that I kind of did was, one thing I did was like consolidated and refinance my loans.
What does that mean? Why don't you explain it? Because, you know, some students are going to be watching and they'll be thinking, what's it talking about? Or if they're an IMG or somebody else that's not familiar with the debt scene in the world. Yeah, so tell us about consolidation.
So consolidation, that specifically means just getting all your different debts into one debt, right? So a lot of times some people might have debts from the government. Sometimes people have debts from different private companies. But when you consolidate, it's you just find one company and they take all of your debt and put it into one thing. Right?
Oh, wow.
So that makes it easier for you because you're not, paying debt to this, paying debt to that, forgetting this or forgetting that.
Right.
So it just makes it convenient for you. And then the other thing is refinancing. Refinancing means basically changing the interest rate on your debt. So when my original $340,000, it was held mostly by the Department of Education, and the loan servicer averaged it out to about 6.5 or 7%, which is a lot.
That's a lot.
That's a lot.
I think mine was 7%, but it was a private loan.
Was a private loan.
Yeah.
So one thing I did was I found different companies, and there's a lot of different companies. The one that I used was SoFi, and they're the biggest one.
They should be sponsoring this video.
Oh, I know, right? Let's just get some...
we'll bleep that out because they're not paying us for it.
Oh, yeah. There we go.
Anyways.
So when I talked to them and I compared different companies, they offered a rate of 3.5%. So almost half, right? And over the course of the period that I was paying it off, that was saving me $15,000 a year.
Oh, wow.
Just on the interest.
Wow.
So that's a lot of money.
Yeah.
Over like 2 or 3 years.
I mean, $15,000, depending on what that could turn out to be a lot more in the stock market.
Oh, yeah.
You know, if you are a real estate investor, that could
Right.
go towards a down payment, towards a rental property.
Oh, yeah.
You know, that could start up a side gig business.
Right.
Like, there's so many things you could do with $15,000 that you don't need to be given to interest. Yeah.
Now think about it, right? If you have a $300,000, a student loan debt, and you just get a 1% decrease in the interest rate, that's $3,000 you saved.
Yeah, right.
Over the course of a period of time. So it makes sense. And the only thing that you got to be aware about is when you have private loans, then you're kind of unable to get government relief. So there's a lot of talk about the government abolishing student loan debt, right? But if you go down that route and make your loans all private, then there's no chance really that the government will abolish it. But then again, the actual reality is that the government's probably not going to do that.
Right.
So there's a lot of talk about abolishing student loan debt, but it's probably not going to happen, right? And if it does happen, it'll probably be in 20 years.
Yeah, right.
So that's the first thing. And also, another thing I kind of want to talk about is the public student loan forgiveness program.
Yeah, so talk about that because a lot of people are interested in that. You know, it sounds like a sweet gig. Work for 10 years and get your loans paid up. But what are your thoughts with that?
So the history of that was actually started under the Obama administration. And the thought was to sort of get people to work in underserved communities. And so the idea was that if you worked for 10 years in a nonprofit, public or private hospital or any type of setting that was nonprofit, and you made payments for 10 years, at the end of that 10-year period, no matter how much loan debt you had, the government would abolish it and just get rid of it for you.
Okay.
But here's the problem. The Trump administration is trying to get rid of that program, right? Because, they're against anything that Obama does. That's the first thing. The second thing is, unfortunately, some of the people now who are just now finishing that 10-year period when they started applying to the Department of Education to get that the debt abolished, they didn't.
Okay.
Yeah, and actually the first year when the first batch of people came to get their loan debt relieved, it was ridiculous. Only 50 people.
Oh, wow.
Right, out of thousands of people who applied, only a very small handful of number of people actually got
they
the
want
loan.
you paying that loan off.
They do.
Yes.
And unfortunately, there's actually a big court battles going on right now between the Trump administration and people who are very upset because they spent 10 years working at a place, right?
Yeah, right.
And expecting to get their debt forgiven, but now the government's
They
sort
can't
of
get it. So really,
right.
you can't rely
Yes.
on
Yeah.
like what they call
The
it.
PSLF,
PSLF.
Public Service Loan Forgiveness.
You
Program,
want to be, I would say, we are all masters of our destiny. You
Yeah.
want to take charge. You want to be proactive because
Right.
you really can't rely on a promise like that.
Exactly. And we as physicians are lucky that we're in a high income group.
Yeah.
So we have the ability to pay it off.
Yeah.
Whereas, for example, someone who's a social worker, nothing wrong with that, but they're not making enough money to pay it off. So they're
Right.
more dependent on those types of programs from the government. Right.
And plus, I feel like they have a lower debt burden, though.
Yeah.
So they're probably, if I had to guess, I'm not the expert in U.S. politics by any stretch, but if I had to guess, I would think that it's a lot easier to forgive that $50K loan than to forgive the $350 loan from a physician, because the anticipation is over the course of your life you're going to make so much more, you should pay it off plus interest, because they're making money. It's the Department of Education. People have paid it off before you. Some people went to their graves with that debt. Ain't nothing happened, so they're still going to come for their money. So you really want to have a plan for yourself.
Right. And now here's one thing. If there's some of you out there who are really gunning for this PSLF program, though we're not really recommending it, you got to be aware you cannot change your loans from public to private, because as soon as you do that, you can't take advantage of the PSLF program. So you got to be aware of that.
We really, again, we're not financial experts, disclaimer, because that's very important.
Right.
This is not a financial advice video. It's not a political video. We're just telling you, if you're interested, make sure you read the fine, what they call it, the fine line, like the fine print. Read the fine print, make sure that what you're signing up for is what you really want.
Right.
Now, I think an even better option is working for an employer that is willing to pay you in real time. Mm-hmm. So that means working for a hospital that's a nonprofit usually, that's willing to take up a certain percentage of your student loan debt during the course of your contract.
Oh, yes.
Do you want to talk about that?
Yes, actually. So I did my residency in New York. And
Big city boy.
So I got a job offer here in Kentucky, and the hospital I was working at basically told me about a program that was offered through the state of Kentucky where they would pay money towards my loan. Now, a lot of states offer money towards student loan debt if you agree to work a certain number of years in a rural part of that state, right? And so right now we're in a rural part of Kentucky, right?
Right.
And you might be thinking, oh my God, New York to a really small town in Kentucky. Like, that's probably a nightmare for a lot of people, but it's really not that bad.
Yeah,
right?
It's not bad when you're saving.
Yes, exactly. And listen, they have everything that you could possibly want, and you can travel.
And there are airports, right?
There are
like
airports
you can
everywhere.
fly yourself out of here whenever you want.
Oh, yeah.
But there's so many advantages to doing that, because I think it's important to realize that delayed gratification is still gratification.
Yes.
And it could be even a lot sweeter, especially when you're younger, like we are, we're not married, like you have so many liberties, like as far as you can travel, you can do so many other things with your life. You don't want to be in a situation where you're not setting yourself up financially for the years where you don't want to work as much, right? So this is a time where you could choose to work more, or you could choose to work smart, so you don't have to work more, but you work in a location where you're getting, dividends or benefits by your employer paying down your debt.
Oh, yeah.
And then your expenses are not as high.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Actually, I had a friend who took a job in Alaska.
Oh, wow.
And he got $50,000 per year on his student loan debt.
I mean, wouldn't you do that for 3 years for $150,000?
Right. It's
and then
just
you
like
can
money
get to
right
ski in Alaska or whatever they do in Alaska, right? Like, wouldn't you do that?
Right.
Okay. I mean, I think there's so many benefits to doing that, because even living in Kentucky, I mean, I enjoy going to the Derby. I've learned so many new things that I would never have learned if I didn't move here.
Oh, yeah. So that's a really important point to make. And it's also really important to note that here in these rural areas, the cost of living is really low.
It's like super low. And for every physician, it would not hurt you at all.
Oh, yeah. Back in New York, when I was living there, my small one-bedroom apartment, you don't believe it was $2,000.
Lord, that would be like a mansion in these parts.
Like literally all my income was just going to live.
Yeah.
I had no savings when I was a resident. I had like nothing. You know?
Wow. Oh, another thing we should talk about, like during residency, if you can, pay towards your debt.
Yes, you can.
Don't defer it to like when you finish, because the interest just keeps going up. That's one thing I did not do. I didn't pay anything. I just put it in forbearance for 3 years. But when I look back, I should have paid toward it. Yeah. And another thing, if you can, in residency, do contribute to 401k. Because what you're doing is that money, even though it may feel like it's so small to you, by the time you finish residency and if you do fellowship, by the time you get to work, it's accrued over the course of time. And your employer would always give a match for that. So why not take advantage of it, right?
Makes perfect
it's free
sense.
money.
Right.
So definitely take advantage of it. Now, there's some debt, financial gurus that say don't pay anything into your retirement until you pay off all your debt, so you have a lot more money to invest.
Right.
You could do it either way, but I don't see the benefit of like walking away from a 10% match, right? Like if if your employer is going to match whatever you put in for 10%, that's free money. Take it.
Yeah, and it's also tax deductible too.
Yes, yeah, so right. Oh, we talked about something too, which earlier I just want to mention. Do speak to your CPA about your interest, because your interest on your student loans are tax deductible. But you definitely have to speak to your CPA about how much of that can be, because there are limitations, especially if your paycheck is a lot higher.
Yeah.
Definitely. So what final points do we have?
So just to rehash everything that we kind of discussed, the first is making sure you live like a resident,
Yes.
especially for those 1 or 2 years when you become an attending. I know it's really hard. You got that big paycheck coming, you really want to spend it, but if you use your money wisely and pay it towards your debt, there's a bigger payoff later on.
Oh yes, absolutely, absolutely. Imagine instead of giving away $2,000, like in your case, every month, that just comes back to you after a delayed period of 2 years.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, you could do so many other things with it. Yeah.
And the second point is make sure to consolidate and refinance if you can,
Yeah.
right? Lower that interest rate as much as you can, because
Right.
you'll be saving money in the long term as you pay off that
As you
loan.
pay off, yes. And the other thing is to consider the public student loan forgiveness, but do read the fine print if you choose to go that route.
Right, exactly. And then the last point is try to live in a rural area, you
Yeah,
know, because
or a low cost of living area, because
Right.
sometimes rural area can sound like middle of nowhere, but it doesn't have to be.
right.
You could be in there are reasonable places in Texas, for example, that are not like super rural, but you get a bang for your buck on housing and other benefits like that. So you don't have to move out to like the middle of nowhere,
Right.
but you can make smarter choices and move away from the New York City, like in the middle of the city, and move upstate or move south.
You know, just to give a final point on this, when I was finishing my residency, I was initially working for jobs in New York. And the amount that I was offered there versus what I was offered here was a difference of, 100%. So I made double the amount that I was making here in Kentucky than I would be in New York City. And imagining the cost of living is significantly higher,
more. And the
right?
and the thing to remember is it's also just not only about like the money, it's about the fact that you still get to have your life.
Yes.
Because you don't want to be working hard, whether it's 1 week on, 1 week off, in the big city, making less and then feeling like you can't meet up with all the things that you want to do, when you can still have the liberty of working that 1 week off, one week on, 1 week off as hospitalists like we do, and live in an area where you're not putting all your money out. It's like a double win, because you're winning as far as you're making 100% more,
Right.
and then 2, you are able to have peace of mind. You're not struggling
Right.
through like every single decision that you have to make,
Right.
and then your cost of living is low. It's less stress, so you end up with a really good quality of life for you. But that's if those are your priorities.
Right. True.
Yeah. If
Again,
keeping up with the Joneses is your priority, then you got it twisted. And
if you want to be 70 and paying off that student loan debt, I
That's
suggest
up
you
to you.
ignore this video.
Right. Totally. Don't do any of the things we've said and keep paying those interest rates for like the rest of your life.
Yes. So here's to being debt free.
Yes.
We should make that a thing in our videos. Just make a clap every time.
We should have like a drink at the end.
Yeah,
All right.
right.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for watching.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Bye bye.
Bye. Okay. Whew, that was long.
Good.
But it was interesting stuff.
Yeah, it was interesting. It was like